Welcome to the Silenced History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos. Fred W. Loring posed with his mule in Arizona, 1871, unaware this would be his last photograph. A correspondent documenting the frontier, he ventured into dangerous territory 2 days later and never returned. In 1886, 11-year-old Jimmy McKinn stood among the Apache, refusing to return to his birth family. Taken the year before, he had formed deep bonds with those who raised him. This rare photo captures him before everything changed. His story challenges what we know about belonging. They paused for a photograph, but this wasn't a journey they chose. In 1886, Apache prisoners were transported by rail near the Nueces River in Texas, guarded by authorities standing above. Families sat together on the tracks, uncertain of their destination. This image captures a moment between two worlds, one ending, another being forced upon them. Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, photographed circa 1880, appears pensive in this rare portrait. In 1877, he led his people on a 1,200-mile march toward Canada. Though it ended in surrender, his words, "I will fight no more forever," echoed the end of an era. 5 members of the Wild Bunch posed circa 1892 before their notorious reputation spread. At this moment, they were just young men, faces unmarked by wanted posters. Within years, they'd be America's most hunted outlaws. Calamity Jane posed with her rifle, embodying the fearless spirit that made her a Wild West legend. Born Martha Jane Canary, she lived and was photographed on her own terms. Few women of her era could say the same. Rose Dunn, known as Rose of Cimarron, photographed in the 1890s holding a revolver. At just 15, she became linked to outlaws during Oklahoma Territory's turbulent years. This authentic portrait predates the 1915 film some claim staged it. 3 cowboys settled their dispute the old-fashioned way: cigars, whiskey, and tense standoff. In the Wild West, disagreements rarely ended peacefully. Notice the calm expressions masking tension. Moments like this could explode or dissolve into uneasy peace. 2 cavalrymen lay on a Kansas street outside a dance hall while local women looked on, circa 1870s. Frontier towns saw these scenes repeatedly, moments where celebration could shift unexpectedly. Life on the edge of civilization was unpredictable, and not every night ended peacefully. Hundreds gathered outside the Guthrie, Oklahoma jail in May 1889 as tensions rose. In newly formed frontier towns, law was fragile. When official processes moved slowly, communities often gathered to demand action. These moments reflected the chaotic nature of early settlement. In 1878, Cheyenne prisoners sat on Dodge City Courthouse steps after being captured trying to return home. They had fled Oklahoma's reservation, desperate to reach their ancestral Black Hills. This reveals broken promises and forced displacement. The Hatfield family posed outside their West Virginia home during the legendary feud with the McCoy family. Beginning after the Civil War, this bitter conflict lasted nearly 3 decades, drawing national attention and even Supreme Court intervention. What started as personal grudges escalated into ambushes and revenge, a cycle neither family could escape. Deadwood, Dakota, 1876, where fortunes were made overnight and lost by sunrise. Gold brought thousands to these muddy streets carved into the Black Hills. Saloons, chaos, and lawlessness packed every corner. Within months, this camp would become one of the West's most notorious towns. Fortunes changed in seconds at this faro table. Inside a Bisbee, Arizona saloon in 1900, men risked everything on a single card. Notice the crowd watching. Some would walk away rich, others with nothing. The house always won, but desperation kept them coming back. Inside the White Elephant in Fort Worth, Texas, 3 men played cards in what appeared civilized. By the late 1800s, Fort Worth had over 60 saloons. Behind closed doors, fortunes changed hands nightly. The White Elephant became legendary, not for elegance, but for what happened at these tables. Miners at Cottonwood Placers stood guard over 500 pounds of amalgam in September 1897. This gold-mercury mixture represented months of grueling work. Claim jumpers and thieves lurked constantly. One photograph captured the moment before fortune or disaster struck. High in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, 1875, miners carved out a brutal existence at 10,000 feet. This camp served the North Star and Mountaineer mines, where men worked in freezing conditions for months. One wrong step, one avalanche, and you were gone. Few got rich, most just survived. 900 feet underground in 1867, Timothy O'Sullivan captured miners inside Nevada's Comstock Lode, using burning magnesium wire for light. These tunnels made fortunes above ground, while men risked their lives below in darkness and dust. A wooden incline stretched up the Nevada hillside at the Illinois mine in 1871, hauling ore from deep underground. Ore cars rode parallel tracks connected to a pulley, primitive but effective. One breakdown meant days of lost production and vanishing profits. One cowboy, thousands of cattle, and nothing but open prairie stretching to the horizon. At the Sherman Ranch in Genesee, Kansas, 1902, roundups required precision and teamwork. His lasso ready, he scanned for fellow riders. Losing control meant chaos. This was real cowboy life, grueling and unforgiving. Dust rises as cowboys work calves on a Montana ranch, marking ownership in the only way that mattered. Without branding, rustlers could steal entire herds. Notice the teamwork. One ropes, another restrains, another marks. Every calf processed meant survival through another harsh winter. Cowboys roped a gray wolf during a Wyoming roundup, protecting livestock from predators. Wolves threatened cattle herds, making elimination routine work. Notice the casual efficiency. This wasn't sport. By the early 1900s, wolves had nearly vanished from the West. A buffalo hunter posed in a Denver studio in 1878 with his Sharps rifle. Between 1870 and the mid-1880s, hunters nearly wiped out millions of buffalo across the plains. By the time this photo was taken, the herds were vanishing fast. Hazen, Nevada, 1905. A dusty street lined with saloons where fortunes and reputations disappeared nightly. The Shamrock Saloon and Joe Dempsey's Place served miners, drifters, and those looking to escape reality. Barrels outside hint at endless drink. These establishments thrived on vice, offering temptation to those already living on the edge of survival. This saloon wasn't just serving drinks, it was showing off the wildest trophies in California. Inside the Table Bluff Hotel in Humboldt County, 1889, patrons sat surrounded by bear hides, antlers, and frontier memorabilia. Every piece told a story of survival. This was where hunters bragged, deals were made, and legends were born. Men posed outside the Western Hotel in Chico, California, circa 1885, with beer barrels stacked high. These establishments served as meeting points where news spread, deals closed, and strangers became allies, or enemies. Notice the casual confidence in their faces. They knew this was their territory. The Cowboy Bar in Jackson, Wyoming, 1908, where saddles replaced bar stools and the Wild West met modern luxury. This wasn't just a drinking spot. Deals closed, stories spread, reputations formed here. The frontier was fading, but places like this kept its spirit alive. Outside the Bob's Saloon in Miles City, Montana, circa 1880, cowboys rested after long trail days. This humble log structure offered cold drinks before they headed back into wilderness. Notice the simple construction, proof that frontier businesses thrived on necessity, not luxury. Men lined up outside the Sweetwater Saloon in Texas, where work, deals, and entertainment collided daily. These establishments served more than drinks. They were community hubs where news spread, partnerships formed, and tensions settled. For better or worse, saloons shaped frontier society. Abe Warner's Cobweb Palace in San Francisco became infamous for never cleaning its interior. Cobwebs, dust, and all. Spiders lived among the bottles. Warner believed the webs brought character. It became a tourist attraction, proving the Wild West had no shortage of eccentric personalities. A lawman relaxed in his office, feet up and hat on, waiting for the next call. Behind him, wanted posters and a safe. These quiet moments were rare. Frontier law meant constant vigilance. One telegram could shatter the peace in seconds. U.S. deputy marshals and clerks posed outside their office in Perry, Oklahoma, 1893. These men enforced federal law in newly opened territories where chaos reigned. Notice their formal attire. Authority had to look the part. In towns born overnight, they were the thin line between order and lawlessness. James Thomas Byrd and John J. Haynes, Texas Rangers, photographed in 1868 during the post-Civil War period. Their attire resembled Civil War fighters more than later cowboys. Photos of Rangers from this era are exceptionally rare, making this an important historical record. General George Crook, the Army's most effective Indian fighter, photographed in Arizona in 1886 with Apache scouts Dutchy and Alchese. Unlike flashy officers, Crook dressed practically and rode his mule. He relied on local knowledge over spectacle. History remembered the showmen, not the strategists. A train crossed a steel trestle bridge spanning a Nevada canyon in the 1870s, modern engineering conquering the Wild West. These massive structures turned weeks-long journeys into days. Towns that were once unreachable suddenly had direct connections. The frontier was shrinking fast, railroad by railroad. Every mile of track brought civilization closer, and the Wild West closer to its end. In 1898, workers stretched railroad lines across Arizona's brutal desert. Towns that took weeks to reach would soon be hours away. Progress was coming, whether the frontier was ready or not. Traders and pack mules paused along the Santa Fe Trail, the 780-mile route connecting Missouri to New Mexico. Opened in 1821, this pathway carried freight for 60 years. By the 1880s, railroads rendered it obsolete. Progress erased the path that built the West. A stagecoach stood before the elegant Beaumont Hotel in Ouray, Colorado, circa 1890. This mountain town combined rugged frontier life with unexpected luxury. Progress and the Old West coexisted here, but not for long. A brass band posed in front of Bridal Veil Falls in Telluride, Colorado, September 1886. The town was only 8 years old, home to a few hundred residents. Behind them, Ingram Peak towered at 12,552 feet. Music brought culture to remote mining camps, reminding isolated communities they were still part of civilization. He's carrying everything he owns, searching for land to call his own. In 1889, Guthrie, Oklahoma was born overnight during the land rush. Thousands arrived with nothing but hope, staking claims in chaos. This man walks through a sea of tents, looking for his lot. Before there were stores or streets, there was this, the first blacksmith shop in Guthrie. In 1889, just days after the land rush, 2 men set up under canvas with only an anvil. Horses needed shoes, wagons needed repairs. This tent became the heartbeat of a newborn town. A town being born from nothing but ambition and dust. On August 8, 1901, Anadarko's first land auction drew hundreds to a barren field in Oklahoma. Temporary banks and lodging tents sprang up overnight. Men bid on lots that didn't even have streets yet. Within weeks, this empty land would become a bustling frontier town. This wagon held everything they owned, and their future depended on reaching the frontier alive. In 1886, a family crossed Loup Valley, Nebraska during the Great Western Migration. No roads, no maps, just endless grassland and hope. Not all survived the journey. Crossing the Gila River looked simple, but one wrong move meant losing everything you owned. In 1885, near San Carlos, Arizona, settlers guided their buckboard wagons through the rushing water, praying the current wouldn't sweep away their animals or supplies. The Gila was unpredictable. Calm one hour, deadly the next. Many who attempted this crossing never made it to the other side. Water wasn't something you turned on from a tap. It was something you fought for every single day. In Texas, 1905, these 2 methods of hauling water kept entire communities alive in the unforgiving Southwest. One man used a wagon, the other a barrel on horseback. Without them, survival was impossible. At Forest Grove School in Oregon, 1882, students learned blacksmithing, essential for frontier survival. Without blacksmiths, wagons broke, tools failed, and progress stopped. These young men became their community's backbone. In 1895, this sod schoolhouse in Woods County, Oklahoma, was all these children had for education. Built from prairie earth, it offered little protection from heat or cold. One teacher managed dozens of students across all grades. Books were scarce, supplies nearly non-existent. Yet they showed up, determined to learn despite impossible conditions. This New Mexico family posed outside their home in 1895, capturing a moment that reveals the complex social dynamics of the frontier. Multiple generations stand together in formal dress, reflecting both prosperity and the era's deeply unequal labor systems. Notice the mix of backgrounds and roles within a single household. This image tells a story textbooks often skip. The Crabtree family hunted and trapped in Arizona's Four Peaks country, living at civilization's edge in a place called Hell's Hip Pocket. With dogs, burros, and determination, they survived in wilderness few dared enter. This was frontier life stripped to bare essentials. No luxuries, just survival. Settlers fled during the Dakota War of 1862, carrying what little they could save. Families huddled on the prairie as conflict erupted over broken treaties and starvation. This photograph captures displacement, a war where survival meant leaving everything behind. The Klondike Dance Hall in Seattle, 1909, where women worked long nights entertaining gold rush fortune seekers. These establishments combined saloon, dance floor, and social club under one roof. The women posed here earned wages in a harsh economy with few options. Behind the respectable facade lay exhausting labor and survival on society's margins. Sister Blandina, photographed in 1872, traveled the Wild West alone, building schools, tending the sick, and standing firm in dangerous situations. Armed only with faith and courage, she challenged the frontier's lawless reputation. In 1893, Apache workers delivered hay to American settlers in Arizona, a stark reversal of roles on their own ancestral land. Once self-sufficient, they now labored under imposed economic systems. This photograph captures survival through adaptation, not choice. The West was changing, and they had no option but to adapt. Members of the Paiute tribe posed near Cedar, Utah in 1872, during a time of tremendous upheaval. Their lands were shrinking as settlers pushed westward. Notice the mix of traditional and Western clothing, evidence of forced adaptation. This photograph preserves faces and stories history tried to erase. Paiute families gathered near Cottonwood Springs, Nevada in 1875 for a rare group photograph. Multiple generations posed together under a tree, their faces capturing a community enduring tremendous change. Traditional life was collapsing as their lands were taken, yet they stood together, preserving their presence for history. A Navajo family posed outside their cabin in the late 1800s with traditional clothing and tools. The Diné, the people, were the Southwest's largest tribe. Early relations with settlers were peaceful until the 1850s, when tensions escalated rapidly. Navajo families near Old Fort Defiance, New Mexico in 1873, preserving traditional life despite mounting pressure. Women worked at looms, children sat close. This rare photograph documents resilience in a world closing in around them. Two Native leaders posed in traditional regalia when their way of life faced extinction. Their ceremonial dress and dignified stance reflect cultural pride amid forced change. Studio portraits like this were rare. Most depicted Native peoples through a settler lens. Members of the Shoshone tribe gather for a traditional dance at Fort Washakie, Wyoming in 1892. Despite confinement to reservation land, they preserved their cultural ceremonies and community bonds. Notice the mix of traditional and Western clothing, evidence of forced assimilation. Yet they danced, keeping their identity alive against pressure to forget. This camp at Fort Belknap Reservation in 1906 captured a way of life rarely documented. The Gros Ventre people maintained their traditions despite increasing pressure. Notice the traditional dwellings and daily routines preserved here. Few photographers were allowed this close to their community. Maimon, a Mojave guide and interpreter, posed in 1871 during an expedition through Colorado. His knowledge proved invaluable to surveyors who would have been lost without him. Yet his contributions were rarely acknowledged in official records. Timothy O'Sullivan, fourth from left, posed with the Wheeler survey crew and Native American guides at Diamond Creek in 1871. They had just ascended the Colorado River through Black Canyon, a treacherous journey few attempted. This expedition documented the unmapped West, relying on local knowledge for survival. Clarence King's survey team camped near Oriana, Nevada in 1867, mapping the West with scientific precision for the first time. These expeditions documented geology, resources, and routes for future settlers. Notice the factory rising from empty desert. Industry was already following exploration. The Wild West was being measured and prepared. In 1873, O'Sullivan discovered this Spanish inscription carved in 1726 at Inscription Rock, New Mexico, 150 years before his expedition. Layer upon layer of history, written in stone, waiting to be found. Camp Beauty sat hidden within Cañón de Chelly, Arizona, in 1873, surrounded by ancient rock formations. Explorers pitched tents in this sacred Navajo landscape, unaware of the displacement history soon to intensify. The old mission church at Zuni Pueblo, New Mexico, stood in 1873 as Spanish colonial influence made visible. Built by indigenous hands, it represented cultural intersection and conflict. This pueblo remains one of North America's oldest inhabited communities. Every image you've seen today carries secrets that textbooks overlooked and history forgot to mention. If you're fascinated by the untold stories behind familiar faces and forgotten moments, hit subscribe and join us every week as we reveal the hidden narratives captured in history's most powerful photographs. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video.